Hello Hopsackers, Finn here, as usual. I'm lucky enough to be joined by Dr Marilyn Glenville this afternoon.
Finn.
Hiya. Marilyn is over on a media tour in advance of giving a talk in October in,
Yes.
where is it?
I'm going Dublin, Cork and Galway.
Wowie, okay, that's the standard, isn't it? What's the subject matter of this?
I'm talking about how to balance hormones naturally. So it's for women of every age and stage in their life. So
great, okay. Wow, that's a broad talk.
it is a broad talk.
How long have you got?
I've got 2 hours.
Okay, already.
Yeah.
Wow, you're going to have to portion them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. It's an amazingly relevant topic as well these days, isn't it? Like the hormonal balancing from PCOS to
endometriosis, fibroids, fertility.
Are you seeing more and more of it?
Much more.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the diagnosis is getting better, but maybe things are being more common because of the estrogen-dependent conditions.
Yeah.
Definitely more polycystic ovary syndrome and the whole aspects of insulin resistance. So
yeah.
I think it is more common.
So do you think it's that insulin resistance? So you think it's down to diet and sugar levels predominantly, or is it I know it's always multifactorial, but what's...
Yeah, I think it is. I think, yes, obviously there will be predispositions to being more sensitive to insulin. But I think, yes, also the change in the diet and, the food being more processed, that, it's going to cause more hormonal issues for women.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find, let's take PCOS or endometriosis maybe for an example. What sort of success rate can women have from, obviously they're from the sort of medication maybe that they'll achieve from doctor to when they switch to maybe a diet and lifestyle approach? Do you see a big difference there?
Yes, I do. And sometimes though with some conditions, say endometriosis, if it's severe, then it would be better to almost have it lasered off. And then treat the underlying cause. It's about then stopping it recurring. So it just depends on the condition itself. Polycystic ovary syndrome, primarily hormonal, so that could be reversed. Endometriosis, fibroids, it's then a consideration whether something needs to be removed initially, and then the whole emphasis is changing the underlying physiology so it doesn't recur.
And you're correcting cell replication and that sort of thing to a degree as well, and there must be a degree of genetic sort of predisposition as well, or do you feed much into that? Or?
And I think definitely with PCOS there is that situation where there could be that genetic underlying predisposition. So it is looking at what's going on in their constitution as to what else we can control in terms of the hormone imbalance.
And so when it comes to that aspect, do you then look to get people tested for genetic markers, etc.? I actually don't know a lot about PCOS with genetic markers. Is there much of an established base for that?
A lot of the time functional testing in terms of straight blood testing, looking at nutritional tests. When somebody has an underlying situation like that, it's actually more direct to find out what's going on, either hormonally and also whether they've got any nutritional deficiencies, and address those directly. So I think the functional testing and looking at what's going on with digestive issues, beneficial bacteria, could be really useful for them.
The microbiome is an insane thing, isn't it? The last 10 years, I remember you've been at shows, the UK health food shows, for a bit longer than me, but for the last 12, 15 years, there was sort of this creeping thing, and the last one was just an explosion of research in the microbiome, but everything from methylation and the knock-on to mood and to all sorts of inflammatory processes to hormonal health, to blood sugar regulation. What isn't touched with the microbiome? It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, and the whole aspect of mental health as well as physical, hormone control, production of nutrients, immune function. And I think over time it'll be more specialised in whether we use certain species for a particular situation rather than just broad spectrum probiotics. So I think it will be much more specialised, but it will give us so much more availability of things we can use for people with specific issues.
And what do you say to people, because a lot of people I think will be reading online these days and certainly coming into us in the shop and having an idea, a notion that whatever their problem, they have to get on sauerkraut. What do you say to that?
It's either that or I do it with a probiotic supplement.
Do you always think it's appropriate to start in probiotics? Things like SIBO or these sorts of things that you see SIBO, for people who don't know, is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which might be characterised by an abundance or an overabundance of bacteria in the wrong parts of the gut. Are you very cautious when people kind of embrace fermented food, or are you...
Yes, cautious, and also I do a lot of stool testing, so I'm looking at the levels of beneficial bacteria, and it actually has been very interesting in the last few months or so that the stool tests with people who are on a lot of fermented food are showing very unusual, obviously these are transient, but very unusual kinds of bacteria that wouldn't have seen a few months back before all of the sauerkraut and everything else and the kimchi came to the fore.
And what sorts of strains, like, so obviously transient strains, so not resident strains?
Yeah, so a lot of yeast, different kinds of yeast strains are in there.
Wow.
So,
ones that are not that explored, and maybe you don't know exactly whether they've been beneficial or not.
Exactly, yes, and neither does the lab when we ask them.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. There's so much more research to do around it, isn't it? I mean, even when we talked about, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, when people said, we've 100 times more bacterial cells in our gut than we have human cells. That's been like reversed and reversed again, like 5 or 10 times since. It's like we really don't fully, like, we have no way of really identifying or seeing or having an X-ray into that part of the world, like our physiology, do we? It's like one of the least understood.
And even with the stool test, they can only pick up what they're looking for.
So
all the time, there'll be things that are there that nobody is actually seeing.
You get surprises, amazing. And so, like, when you see people, maybe, let's say probiotics is one thing, but going to maybe towards paleo diets or these sorts of things because they've read about maybe the Hadza tribe or these sort, the beneficial bacteria that you see much more predominantly in those kind of traditional hunter-gatherer tribes. What do you think of that as an option? And when people go a little bit maybe militant on the kind of like no gluten, no grain, that sort of direction, do you see usually benefits or everything?
Sometimes benefits. I think we have to be careful long term that we could then be depleting these levels of bacteria. So there is a bit of a balance all the time, and I think for me it's not going too extreme one way or the other in case that's going to cause a different issue. So yes, it is an interesting journey, and also interesting to see what is coming up from these testing, and I think the whole area of nutritional testing has really exploded, and to be able to track people's deficiencies, correct them, retest, has changed what we do in the nutritional world, and it's been wonderful. It gives so many tools, and it's taken away the guesswork.
Great, fantastic. I mean, do you still get people to keep food diaries, and is that still a big part of your clinical practice as well? Do you still pick through that type of first-hand empirical stuff as opposed to the testing, or do the two always go hand in hand? Or?
Oftentimes, yes, definitely the food diary, because then we're looking at basically, are you missing meals? What is going on just on a day-to-day basis. But when somebody's coming in with, say, fertility issues, that sort of thing, then checking deficiencies across the antioxidants, omega, getting the balance of the omega-3 and 6 has been something that's so useful. And I have to say, out of thousands that we've tested in the clinic, nobody has had actually too much omega-3 and not enough omega-6. The switch around in terms of this pro-inflammatory response has been huge in terms of what's coming on in the diet and the dominance of this omega-6 coming in.
Fascinating. Yeah, it was really interesting. So you do hear the odd kind of bit of concern kind of thrown out that maybe we're pushing the omega-3 thing a little bit too hard, and maybe there's, I think there's certainly an argument for when people are on a poor diet and might be smoking, the pro-oxidative potential for omega-3 supplements, particularly when you're going to high levels, is something of a concern. But you think, by and large, omega-3 it's a corrective thing.
It is definitely. From what I've seen in the tests, even just make the assumption that that's going to be out of balance. But I think that's why the testing is so useful, because you can see how far somebody's shifted. You can then judge how much they would need for 3 months, and then check that it's actually back to normal. And then it's maintenance. Same with vitamin D. That the concept is often people are doing mega doses when they may not need it, and so I find testing, supplementing, retesting useful, and then maintenance.
Absolutely. And so, what sort of period of time would you retest in, say, for something like omega-3 and maybe vitamin D as well?
3 months.
3 months is enough for both of them, is it?
Usually, pretty good to know actually that you've made the correction, everything's back to normal, and then they're maintaining it with either the diet, or if somebody's not going to, say, oily fish or whatever, or flax seeds, you're going to be doing it in supplement form at a maintenance level.
And do you tend to say to people, let's say with omega-3s, that they cycle which one they use? Do they change brands? Do they change ratios? Get sometimes a 369, sometimes an omega-3 on its own? Or do you tend to say stick at the one thing, or what's the...
That would depend on the blood test, but if it's definitely a dominance of omega-6, it's just the
omega-3 and don't mess
just
around.
In that, and then see where the balance comes back.
And how the retest
And
works.
like you know, omega-9 is not an essential fat, so we can manufacture it in the body. The other two we can't. So it's then trying to control where there may be this overabundance of omega-6, and then correcting where the lack of these omega-3s are coming in. Interesting where this omega-6 is coming from. Obviously a lot of the vegetable oil, but where the thinking is actually that it's coming through the corn-fed chickens and the corn-fed cattle, that it's shifting their ratio, and then people are eating that, so the whole dominance of this omega-6 is being shifted by how the food chain is shifted.
It's being managed. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And do you think we're in a situation like, I know in the States there's a lot more talk about grass-fed production. Are you seeing that in the UK as well?
Not so much. It's something that people have to really ask for. And a lot of time on a menu, corn-fed is seen as something, as a marketing tool.
It's still there, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like the low fat thing. You're like, you're still claiming this as a benefit?
Yes, it's very natural, this corn-fed chicken rather than a chicken.
Lovely and yellow, great.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And like in terms of your own diet, because I'm sure, I mean, you're an incredibly healthy lady and you have a lot of the knowledge and the tools yourself. Do you supplement with omega-3 still? Do you manage to hit a home run with, like, you know, your diet with sardines and mackerel and salmon all the time, or how do you work it?
Well, I had salmon for lunch. I do the best I can, but obviously I'm travelling quite a bit. So I take the view that a supplement program for me is also an insurance policy. So for me, I would take a multivitamin and mineral, omega-3 and vitamin C.
Pretty much all the time.
Plus, what I do with my food is as healthy as possible.
Great.
Obviously, there will be compromises. Airplane food, whatever, you know, you just have to do the best you can within the situation that you're in. Okay,
and with airplane travel, because that's one that gets talked about an awful lot from an oxidative stress point of view. Do you do particular things to protect yourself from those, or from when in terms of travel, or?
Just eating well, drinking the hydration, that sort of thing, and taking other food on board. Even though I've asked for an Asian vegetarian or whatever it is, it just may be inedible.
It's not always the thing.
I always have a stash with me.
Smart lady, well done, deadly. This has been really nice talking to you, and thank you very much for sharing a bit of your knowledge. Cool, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Marilyn. Thank you, guys.